You know, this issue of Iran raises a lot of other issues. You may not think so, but it does. And the battle with Iran is not just a localized battle, it's not just a regional battle, it's an international battle. The communist Chinese are watching, Xi, because he wants to invade Taiwan. Russia's watching because they've already invaded Ukraine. And then we have Un, the inbred North Korea. He's watching because he'd like nothing more than to take out South Korea. So this is a big deal. And they're watching how we act. They're watching how the Iranian regime acts, because the axis of evil includes the Iranian regime. The Arab countries are involved, whether they like it or not. They'd rather not. They're very cowardly. They'd rather not take on this enemy. Turkey, Erdogan, he wants to recreate the Ottoman Empire. He's a genocidal maniac. Pakistan, that's led by Islamists, that is aligned with Iran, our mediators, if you will. A grave threat to whom? To our allies, India. So all of this is part of a whole. So I want to get into this in a little bit of a different way. There's no question that the military actions President Trump has taken against the Iranian regime have been courageous and farsighted. He's done more than all previous 7 presidents combined since the Islamist revolution in 1979. In fact, they did nothing, or worse than nothing. In the case of Obama and Biden, they actually funded the enemy with tens of billions of dollars in direct payments and lifted or refused to enforce sanctions totaling hundreds of billions of dollars that they used to fund their nuclear program and their conventional weapons. For the most part, with a few exceptions during these past presidencies, the Iranian regime murdered American military personnel and civilians with little or no military response. Do we still care about that, ladies and gentlemen? I think we do. They armed the Iraqis with IEDs that killed and maimed untold numbers of our soldiers and Marines in the Iraq War. They funded, armed, and directed Hezbollah's deadly attacks against our embassies, Marines, air crews, and soldiers in Lebanon and Saudi Arabia. They were behind Hamas's terrorist attacks against Israel as recently as October 7, 2023, when scores of Americans, people don't understand, Americans were murdered then, raped, taken hostage, along with the Israelis. Of course, there are the numerous assassination plots against the president and his family, and the list goes on and on. And yet, the Iranian regime still stands. Is that okay with you, Mr. and Mrs. America? Despite our military operations starting in February, in the spectacular early days of this war, we, with our Israeli partners, cut through the Iranian military and defense like, well, as George Patton once put it, crap through a goose. And then, after about 2 weeks, we hit the brakes. We stopped. We declared a ceasefire with the enemy and entered into a kind of negotiations. Since then, the enemy has shown it had not changed its stripes, as many of us knew it never would after 47 years of experience. But we figured this time would be different, or somebody figured it would be. After all, the Iranian regime had never been hit militarily like it was hit in the early days of this war. Its leadership was decimated, its Navy and Air Force were decimated, its ground-to-air missile defense systems and radar systems were decimated, its inventory of missiles severely damaged, its launch sites greatly diminished. We were obviously hoping and calculating that this would result in the enemy begging for relief. But they didn't. They violated every ceasefire, of which there have been many. They violated the original Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, which was defective in many ways from our perspective, and provided the enemy with hundreds of billions of dollars if they would only behave for a few weeks. But it didn't stand because they wouldn't behave for a few weeks. And we are at the table again, negotiating over keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. That is, international waters open, without molestation or fees imposed by the enemy. As for nuclear weapons, ballistic missiles, and uranium, it's not clear how that will be resolved, or whether just nuclear weapons are on the negotiating table to the exclusion or dismissal of the rest. In the original MOU, ballistic missiles, which are the missiles on which the nuclear warheads would be installed to strike us, for example, once they perfect those missiles, they were not even mentioned in the MOU. Nonetheless, grave damage has been done to the Iranian nuclear sites, no question. They have been hit very hard, and as of today, it would take several years to reconstitute them if they are able to reconstitute them. That is, except for Pickaxe Mountain. Well, it's a nuclear site of tremendous importance. Pickaxe Mountain has remained largely untouched by direct military strikes. Recent satellite imagery, according to news reports, indicate ongoing construction, fortification of tunnel entrances and barrier installations. Even more, Israeli intelligence and their assessments and Western officials and their assessments believe that Iran has moved thousands of uranium-enriched centrifuges deep into the hardened tunnels inside Pickaxe Mountain. So where do we go from here? That's the question, right? Well, the enemy has not surrendered, and it's not going to surrender. The enemy has no intention of leaving the Strait of Hormuz as a free and open international waterway. Not today, not tomorrow, not the next day. And ultimately, that's what they seek to do, is control it. The enemy will not give up its obsession with nuclear weapons or intercontinental ballistic missiles. It just won't. If you understand their ideology, if you understand how they think, they're not giving anything up unless they're forced to. It does not appear that the enemy will even pretend to abandon any of this in any agreement. It will never honor an agreement, even if there is an agreement. Certainly not after the Trump administration has left office. If a Democrat president follows, he or she will have no interest at all in enforcing an agreement. In fact, they may fund the enemy again, like Biden and Obama did. If an isolationist Republican is elected president, and they're there, and they're prominent, he will have no interest in enforcing the agreement either. In other words, the Iranian regime will absolutely ignore the agreement, and our politicians do not have the stomach or the will to enforce it, as evidenced by, among other things, the impotency of the prior 7 presidents before this president. There are 3 additional subjects involved in this war that require mention in our attention. First, we have used as mediators Qatar and Pakistan, and at times Oman and Turkey. These mediators have their own interests that are not aligned with ours. And in significant ways, they do not support our positions. Qatar, Pakistan, Oman, and Turkey have relationships with the Iranian regime, and in many ways, those relationships continue. They know what I just shared with you about the Iranian regime's survival. That is, the regime will be around for some time, if not a long time, after we move on. And the Trump administration comes to a definitive end in 2.5 years. These other countries ultimately want a working, if not friendly, relationship with the Iranian regime, because they will be in the neighborhood no matter what, apparently. Therefore, they are not, as General Keane has pointed out, as I pointed out, great advocates for our country. Yet apparently, they are the only countries with whom we can work, who can in turn work with the Iranian regime. And if you want a deal, this is what you're left with. Second, and along these lines, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and many of the other Gulf Arab regimes are looking out for their own interests, not only as I just explained, but also they do not want their countries and their oil fields attacked anymore by Iranian missiles. Now, they may not have any choice because the Iranian regime is on the move with their missiles. And of course, Saudi Arabia is in their sights. It was all just fine when Israel was taking incoming missiles from Iran and Hezbollah, or when our military was being fired upon, but they desperately want to protect their fiefdoms from any more Iranian missiles. Well, appeasement's not going to work. It's not going to work for us. It's not going to work for Israel. It never has. And it's not going to work for Saudi Arabia either. course, that hasn't stopped the Houthis from engaging Saudi Arabia or the Iraqi militia, has it? And to be clear, it will never stop Iran from threatening to attack or attacking any of these countries after we've moved on. In fact, the regime will be more emboldened than ever and will be able to threaten and blackmail these countries virtually at will. And I might add, threaten all of our many bases located throughout the Arab world that nobody talks about but me, not one of which we have in Israel, by the way. These countries have been urging the president not to conduct further military actions against Iran and to pursue a diplomatic deal to appease. As the president stated, they did not want him to unleash what the president said would have been the greatest military offensive since World War II. And we didn't do that. Not yet. Third, we have sidelined and through the press have trash-talked our greatest ally, Israel. Not only in the region, but they're our greatest ally anywhere in the world. Do you know of one better? Please, show me the NATO countries. I assume this is being done for several reasons, including to accommodate the Arab countries and the mediators, as a sign of perhaps capitulation to the Iranian regime. Because, as the vice president has said, there are times when there is a lack of an alignment of interests. And by that I mean it is apparent to me that we want a deal, at least right now. That could change. The Israelis want to defeat the regime. They want to defeat the enemy because they know that's the only way. Now, that's not to say that the Israelis and we are working at cross purposes, or put another way, I have no doubt we are working closely together on a myriad of intelligence and military fronts. We have two of the greatest leaders of all time, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, and they know that we must work together. And hopefully that objective will be jointly the destruction of this regime. It is said, and it has been said by some of my fantastic guests on this show, that we are setting the stage and laying the groundwork for the regime's ultimate collapse. I certainly hope it turns out that way. I truly do. For if it does survive, our children will have to deal with a regime that will have much more advanced missile technology, thanks in part to the communists in China. It will have nuclear warheads by the dozens, just like in North Korea, and it will be far more difficult to stop them. For me, this is not a risk worth taking or passing on to our children and grandchildren. Fourth, and perhaps most problematic, at least for me, and for several reasons, we have taken certain tactics off the table, thereby undermining a strategy of victory, both in the short and long term. What am I talking about? Despite all the firepower we've used, which has been massive and unprecedented in the last half century, and which only this president has shown the courage to use, we've chosen not to hit key targets that would likely cripple not just the Iranian economy generally, but create a dire circumstance for the regime itself. And that includes most notably Karg Island, as I've been talking about. 85 to 90% of all of Iran's oil transport through Karg Island. It is a wide open target, unlike Pickaxe nuclear site. But if Karg Island goes, so goes the regime. It would mean almost no way for the enemy to pay the Iranian Republican Guard Corps, the IRGC, like their SS, or the regular army, or the police. In other words, it is a direct, devastating attack on the internal Iranian security forces and police state. I understand we have a naval blockade now, but we can't keep a blockade like that with ships in place forever, especially given the fact that our Navy has already been badly depleted since the Reagan military buildup and since the Trump military buildup. The other threats we face include Communist China, the South China Sea, and potential attacks on Taiwan and South Korea. And the Iranian regime knows this. Also, we told the enemy in advance, not directly, but through our military positioning in the region, we have no intention of introducing ground forces into this war, certainly not a large number of ground troops. The fact is there's no reason to, because it's clear what we seek is a deal right now, not a military victory. Also, there's literally no support for it by either party or the advisors to the president. As best as I can tell, and given the midterm elections in 90 days, that's simply not going to happen. Okay, but the Iranian regime knows this as well. That's the problem. The point is that a huge military resource and capability has been and will be off the table. Which brings me to the next issue, and to me it is the big issue. We must arm, train, and support with air cover and target identification Iranian opposition and resistance groups, the Iranian people. It is in our national security interest to do this and get on with it, as time is not on our side. These are our friends. Same with the Kurds. Just because Turkey and Erdogan doesn't want them funded, they helped us defeat ISIS. They helped us in Iraq. These are our allies. These are good, strong warriors. And the Iranian people and the Kurdish people should not be sitting on the sidelines. The Israeli military should not be sitting on our sidelines. I'm well aware of the midterms in about 90 days, which is why I have stated here, week after week, what additional measures I believe should be instituted to win this war and get it over with. The appeasers and isolationists must be countered by me and others, for they are dangerous ideologues, and they were as they were in the 1930s, who would enable our enemies, not just in Iran, but around the world, to build up while we build down. I'm aware that if we lose the midterms, it will be disastrous for our country. We're up against an enemy within our country that seeks to impeach our president and destroy our constitutional construct. But because of the same conditions that existed before the engagement began, we could lose the midterms. Not because of the Iranian war, because of other issues, debates over the economy. We have issues with quality candidates, party organizations, and still immigration, given the growing and ominous Islamist jihadi presence in our country, as we watch the collapse of Europe and these forces operating in our own communities. More the reason to show our resolve, to get more involved here at home and active than ever before, to do everything we can, no matter who we are and where we are, to put our mostly small differences aside, right here in America, and unite like never before. The Reagan Revolution, the Tea Party Revolution, the Trump Revolution, MAGA, the conservative movement of all stripes, all patriotic American-loving citizens. It is up to us to determine whether we will live free and happy, or whether we will usher in a decline led by the dark forces of anti-Americanism. We, Mr. and Mrs. America, will decide our own fate and the fate of future generations.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.